This morning, we're going to start off by talking about getting a grip on parish evangelization and outreach to inactive Catholics. To begin with, no parish is perfect at this, no parish. But over time, we found various elements that are very important for us in terms of learning how to help our parishes be more open and active in reaching out to inactive Catholics. We looked at the passage from John's Gospel, and it's the passage about Jesus saying what he's come to do and how he's come to complete the Father's will. And this passage is really a spiritual reminder to us of what it means to be fruitful or fruitless in our efforts in evangelization. How can we know God's will for evangelizing inactive Catholics in our situations? Jesus's answer is quite simple and actually deceptively simple. He says, a son cannot do anything on his own, but only what he sees the Father doing. That we can only really do what we see the Father doing. Instead of trying to do our own thing somewhere else, the way we want to do it, we have the opportunity to look for God the Father's, what he's already doing by the power of the Spirit in our parish, in our lives, in our families, in every situation. It means a different approach to things than just jumping into them. First thing I would suggest, we need to stop, look, and listen. In every situation, in our personal lives, in our families, in our parishes, we need to stop, look, and listen. This was a phrase that came from the American Safety Council when I was growing up as a child. When you were going to cross the street, before you cross the street, stop, look both ways, and listen. And I think what the first thing we need to do when we want to find out what God's will is for evangelizing inactive Catholics in our parishes, in our lives, is to stop, look, and listen, first of all, to God in prayer. Without a prayer life, it's going to be very difficult to know what to do next in reaching out to inactive Catholics. Secondly, listening to God through the scriptures, the Mass readings, daily reading, praying with the scriptures, studying the scriptures, that we look for themes and keywords and phrases where God actually, it seems to come like almost God speaking to us in some way, but not in a sensible way that we, like an apparition or a miracle that takes place, but just from hearing certain things and say, yeah, that's what I think God is telling me right now. It means to stop, look, and listen to church teaching. Particularly in the Catholic Church, we have more on evangelization than any other church that's been written. But it's also a great challenge to us. I remember one of my friends who was a Pentecostal preacher who said he'd read all the Catholic Church's teachings and documents on evangelization. And he said this, you Catholics talk about evangelization better than anyone. Better than anyone. And it's not surprised, we've been doing it for 2,000 years. And then he said, but you suck at doing it. And you need to learn how to do it better. We need to listen to inactive Catholics, why they've left or why they've stopped coming, and to hear without judgment the struggles that they go through. They will speak to us. And as one Catholic priest very early in reaching out to inactive Catholics used to say, inactive Catholics are speaking like prophets to us about what's missing in our lives. We need to listen to what's been done in the past in our parish to try to reach out to inactive Catholics. All too often, we want to start something in a parish. We don't know what's happened in the past. We don't ask questions. We don't try to find out about it. We don't see what the results were, how people felt about it. And so people will try to start outreach programs that were tried in the past, maybe not really effectively executed and not completed well. And it left a bad taste in the pastor's mouth, in the parish staff's mouth, in many ministries in the parish, and in many other people. They felt like, oh, well, that was a big boom. And then some one of us might come in and suggest the same thing, and then wonder why everybody goes, that's not going to work. Not here. Now, I'm not saying about any judgment about what they did or how they did it. I'm just saying that if we don't understand, if we don't stop, look, and listen as to what's happened in the past, we really are going to get run into obstacles. And finally, we need to listen to the deepest desires of our pastors, our staff, and active Catholics about their inactive people. I talk about this when I meet with parish staffs and pastors about what I call the 3 a.m. questions, the stuff that wakes them up at 3 a.m. and they're asking themselves, oh my God, what's going on? Why are people stopping coming? Did I do something wrong? And to hear them speak from the center of their hearts about the things that they're most worried about. The second thing is to thank God for what he's already doing in people's lives, in inactive Catholics in our parish and beyond, by the power of the Spirit. God, in the power of his Spirit, is always working. There's never a time when God is not working. We can never say that even somebody who's far away from God, that the Spirit is not doing something in their life to call them to goodness and to call them to Jesus. Thirdly, we need to surrender our hopes, our wills, our dreams for reaching out to inactive Catholic friends and family to Father God. Because sometimes they get in our way and we're not able to see clearly what God wants to do because we've got our own ideas of what it is that we want to do. A fourth thing is patience. It will take time to concretely discern and to do the Father's will in your particular situation. And fifth, perseverance. In order to bear fruit, in order to bring others closer to Jesus in the power of the Spirit, it's going to take perseverance akin to like someone sowing seed in the field. Matter of fact, the parable of the sower and the seed in Luke's gospel ends with this very line. But as for the seed that falls on rich soil, they are the ones who, when they heard the word, embraced it with a generous heart and bear fruit through perseverance. Now, I remember so many times when working in a parish or working with a diocese, and I've done both for many, many years, that I would pray. The only thing I could pray for was perseverance. I just say, God, please help me to persevere in this. It's not working out the way I thought it was. I've got to figure out a different way to approach this. Please show me, help me to persevere and not to give up on my brothers and sisters who are away. And they really are my brothers and sisters, all of them, every single one, even the ones I don't like, even the ones I never got along with. They're my brothers and sisters in Jesus. So those 5 things are really important in terms of spiritually approaching, reaching out to inactive Catholics. Stop, look, and listen. Thank God the Father for what he's already doing. Surrender our wills, our hopes, and our dreams to God the Father. Have patience and persevere. God isn't finished with us yet. We can say that over and over again. From there, I want to talk about how to get a grip on outreach to inactive Catholics. The 5 fingers is an approach that we came to after a period of years of trying to figure out why was it working some places, why was things happening in other places that were not happening in my situation, what was going on. The first finger is Evangelization Commission. I put it in quotes because the commission is not a new group that you invent. Secondly is an evangelization team or working committee. Thirdly is training in evangelization. Fourth is project evangelization. Fifth is a designate for evangelization in the parish. And we'll come back to this later, but notice that the number 3, training in evangelization, a core of trained and degreed evangelizing trainers, is missing most of the time from most parishes. And that's one of the main reasons why we never move forward in evangelization. We don't train people to evangelize. How I came to this was through the thing of the teaching of Saint Teresa of Avila. Christ has no body on earth but yours, no hands but yours, and yours are the hands by which he is to bless us now. If God is going to work through us now, we need to be willing to work with him in whatever way he wants to. I came to meet Jesus Christ and to start working in evangelization when I was a college student and evangelized through something called the Antioch Weekend Retreats. It was an offshoot of Curcio for college students that studied the documents of Vatican II. Then in 1970s, the pastor of St. John's Parish in Worcester, Massachusetts, asked us to help him with door-to-door evangelization in his dying parish. Had about 200 active people from the parish. And in time, as we went door-to-door evangelizing, and we didn't know what we were doing, please, I've said this before, we just went out and talked with people. And finally, the thing that got us to talk with more people than any, hi, we're from St. John's Parish down the street. Would you like to talk about the Pope and the sacraments? Because they knew we were Catholic then, and they were willing to talk with us. And it was wonderful that anybody would talk with us. And we just learned a lot of things from that. That outreach grew into being a prayer group in that parish, which drew thousands and thousands of people to Jesus Christ. That was what God was doing. We were just kind of, uh-oh, God's got something else he wants us to do. Oh, we better do this. How do we do that? I don't know. We don't know what to do. This is in the early 1970s, and the document on evangelization by Paul VI, St. Paul VI, on evangelization in the modern world had not even yet been published when we started doing these things. I began studying then about how to evangelize inactive Catholics, and I've continued to do that ever since. For the first 20 years after Pope St. Paul VI document, there were many misses about doing evangelization on a parish level, and we had a few hits. But only after the 1990s did we begin to really understand it, to move forward. We actually began to see what was effective, what wasn't effective, how did we work on this, what are the things we can do to do it better. And we talked about the 5 fingers. I'm going to have my hand, I have a hand here that has a gripping gloves. These are gloves so you don't slip, like when you try to turn a screw or open a door or something during the winter. And the thumb of the finger is what I call the Evangelization Commission. Now, that doesn't mean we invent a new group to be doing the commission's work. A parish commission is a group that's already exists that doesn't realize most of the time that it has the power and the call from Jesus Christ to call other people to evangelize. It could be an existing group like the pastor and the staff that has that power, the pastor and the pastoral council, the pastor and the trustees of the parish, the pastor and a few friends in the parish who are trusted. And they have the power to call people forth to evangelize and to resource them. To try to ask people to evangelize without resources is like trying to tell us, go build a house, but I don't have any wood. So, but there is a group in your parish, in my parish, in every single parish. There's, when you finally get down to it, who makes the decisions about where things are going to be focused by use of resources in the parish? People, money. This group is called to outreach and evangelize of inactive Catholics and to call everyone in the parish to realize that's all our job. But it's going to take people to kind of lead us in that. It isn't going to happen automatically. They commission others to engage in the mission of evangelization along with giving them resources. And they ask these questions like, how is every society, how is every committee, how is every ministry, how is every service already evangelizing or not? And if something is not evangelizing, how can we make it evangelizing? And if something can't be made evangelizing, then why are we doing it? The second finger is the evangelization team or working committee. It does not do all the evangelizing. It might be part of another committee. It might be a group of ad hoc people pulled together by the pastor. It's not necessarily got the term evangelization team or committee, but it has the call to do these things. It's the one that tries to develop a strategic plan for evangelizing inactive Catholics. It's the one that helps ministries and committees and service groups to receive training in one-to-one evangelizing so that they can invite people back to the church. It challenges us all about who's missing from the parish. And it trains all active parishioners, if they are willing and when they're willing, in ways to reach out and evangelize inactive Catholics in daily life. The third part is the training for evangelization. Now, this has been most missing in Roman Catholic parishes in this country for years and years and years. For some reason, we missed something as we were going through the whole time of preparing for evangelization since 1975 with Pope St. Paul VI's document on evangelization. We assumed people knew how. We assumed they knew and had the tools to go out and evangelize others. We never were called upon to do that. It wasn't our fault. We never had the chance to do it. Many of us lived in parishes that were enclaves of different groups of people who moved nationally into this country, or there were places where people were had so many things to do in a parish that already, because it was so big and powerful, that they had no time to learn about how to reach out to other people that weren't there. We needed training, and God wants to give us that help even today. This group is the one that tries to get trained, and there are ways to do that online. There are ways to do it in person. There's even places now in the country where people can send people to get a degree in evangelization, which is wonderful. That wasn't there all the time. It might not be available to everyone, might not have the resources for it. But their goal is that a small group of people within the parish, not necessarily running their own thing, but a group of people within the parish, are people who are really aware that they know some few things about how to evangelize others, a little bit more perhaps than what some other people know about how to evangelize. Now, this group of people looks to train ministry leaders so that they in turn can train the members of their ministries and their small groups and their committees about how to evangelize and reach out to inactive Catholics. They also might guide projects that go on, offering supervision, mentoring, and internships for people who would like to learn more about how to go about evangelizing and reaching out to inactive Catholics. This group of people is very important, is one of the key things, and if it's missing from a situation, we seldom make progress in reaching out to others. The fourth thing that we have is project evangelization. Now, project evangelization is what we mean by running programs to reach out to inactive Catholics. There are many, many projects. There are many other ways to do this, but these are some. We need some kind of guidance about how to do that, and we'll talk about that later. What is a project in evangelization is something that tries to create a pocket of success. It's a program of projects that have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you can actually measure what happened. How many people participated? A year later, are there any of these people around in the parish anymore? You can do some real work with that, and you begin to get a sense of how evangelization might take place. A single program or set of programs is not all we need, however. Project evangelization is the third finger, 1, 2, 3, commission, evangelization committee, and projects. It's one of the 5 fingers of reaching out to inactive Catholics. The evangelization team will help whoever it is that's running the project to explore prepackaged programs or develop new ones. Now, developing new ones is not that easy, so prepackaged programs can be the way to go, at least for a time. And in over years, you might develop something of your own. A steering committee is formed that runs the project itself, that's outside of the usually the evangelization committee. And they complete project or program afterward is evaluated and looking at both successes and shortcomings and ways to improve. This is an area where we often stumble. We do something, it doesn't work quite the way we thought it was going to work. 1 million people do not return to the church this year. And so we chuck it and we move on to another project or another program. We certainly have many programs to choose from, like an ice cream parlor where you go in and ask for which kind of ice cream you'd like. It can become the flavor of the month instead of being a real evangelizing experience. So it needs to take time. There has to be that patience. There has to be that willingness to say, oh, we'll take some more time. What worked, what didn't work? What can we do to improve what didn't work? How can we make that more effective in the future? The fifth finger is that many parishes need to give somebody the responsibility to kind of coordinate with if there's a team of evangelization, if there's project evangelization, if there's training, someone needs to be the point person in the situation. It could be an appointed person, it could be a staff member, it could be a volunteer person, it could even be somebody paid in the group. Last time we had a session, we had a fellow that joined us called Casey Phillips. Casey Phillips is the evangelization director in a parish, in the Cathedral Parish, Sacred Heart Parish, in the Lexington Diocese of Kentucky. So one of the things that, there are people in that situation. There are more and more people doing it, even as a life and a full-time thing. But that's not necessarily where a parish would start. A parish would at least start by designating someone is going to be the point person. They're going to connect with the pastor and the staff. They're going to connect with whoever, the ones that help us to get the resources, the commission, who commission us for evangelization. They're going to be the communication point. They're going to be the person who helps to coordinate things. And that's often very helpful. This person's primary job is to be an advocate for evangelization. A designate in a parish, they're the ones who always going to be bringing up, what can we do to make this more evangelizing? What can we do to make this more effective? How can we approach this in a way that's going to make this really more powerful and more effective than we could ever imagine before? I think that one of the things to watch out for in all of this stuff is that we don't marginalize evangelization by doing something like this. If we don't have the attitude among us that everybody's job is to reach out to inactive Catholics, then in fact, it'll be no one's job to reach out to inactive Catholics. That's a marginalization thing that happens. Second thing that happens is that we will say, oh, we've got an evangelization person who's going to take care of that. Okay, John Zawacki has been appointed by his parish as the evangelization designate. You haven't, John, don't worry about it. But this is what could happen. You'll become the evangelization designate. So anybody who comes to the parish and says, how do you reach out to inactive Catholics? The pastor and everybody else on the staff and everybody in the entire parish will go, oh no, you got to talk to John Zawacki. He's the evangelization person. Automatically what's happened is evangelization has been marginalized to one person. It's impossible for that one person to do that alone. Impossible. Or a team of people running a program, like many of the programs that we sent to you, that becomes the whole thing about what evangelization, but they're only a project team. They're only doing something that's temporary and that they cannot carry the burden of it. So what happens is, oh, that's the Light of the World Ministries thing. Nobody else does evangelization, just them. Or that's the Alpha team. That's the one that does all the evangelization. And that's a marginalization of evangelization, and it makes evangelization not. So the 5 fingers of effective parish evangelization will not all be present at once in your parish. You may feel like your parish is like this. Here's the 5 fingers. Here's how many you've got that are working. But that's probably not true. There's always a group, the commission group, that has a call from God to be calling forth people to evangelize. That is always present in every single parish. You just got to identify who is it that has that power? Who is it that has that call? And the pastor can help you to do it. Usually he'll tell you who's doing it. Most of my situations. But that's and you've got to work with them to help them to see evangelization of inactive Catholics is important. And help them, feed them materials and send them articles and talk with them about it. Tell them about your relatives that are not connected to the church or anything, and ask them to help you to find ways to reach them. The evangelization team, well, that's a group that gets going after the commission realizes it's got its job, and it might be a small group to start off with and grow it in time. A project team is often where we start, but it's not the only part of it. It's not only one of the 5 fingers. Training in evangelization is extremely important. That center of the hand, so to speak, that if we don't give people training in evangelization, it's almost always going to stumble because we have assumed that they know how already, and they don't. And finally, someone be appointed by the pastor or be hired or whatever happens. I don't care. It doesn't have to be full-time, it doesn't have to be part-time, it doesn't even have to be a person who has any time that other than free time to give, they're volunteering, But that kind of makes it work. And when that happens, the hand of the parish starts to reach people. The more these pieces develop over time, and it takes time. I worked in a diocese where we were doing this on the diocesan level. And we got to do this, but they didn't want to realize that they were. So we're kind of like halfway. We got an evangelization team going in terms of our parish, our team on our staff. We sort of had many projects going on at the same time. And then when it came time to talk about, well, what are we going to do with training? We did training. And then we had only a part of this one and none of this one. So we were only, it's not the live long and prosper of the Star Trek, live long, I can't even do it right. Live long and prosper. We were sort of on our way, and that took 11 years. So to think that it's going to happen overnight is not. Sherry Waddell, one of the most influential writers on evangelization in the church today, who wrote the book Forming Intentional Disciples, which is a worldwide bestseller, not just a Catholic bestseller, but a worldwide bestseller. Last I heard, it was over 150,000 copies sold worldwide. In her book on Forming Intentional Disciples, she mentions something, and then she mentions it again in a second book that comes out, which is A Parish That Forms Intentional Disciples. What does it take to evangelize? And I say also evangelize inactive Catholics. Long obedience to the will of God together over time in the same direction. Long obedience to the will of God together over time in the same direction. The iceberg principle. We weren't aware of this until we began working on evangelization and evangelizing others together with some Protestants. And so we have this iceberg, and you see the iceberg, the 10% of it that's above water, right? Below it is the 90% that's not above water and you don't see it. Probably one of the most famous shipwrecks, what happened to the Titanic when it thought it could crash into an iceberg and it wouldn't be damaged, but found out that the 90% roughly of the iceberg that's below water is big and bad and much more involved than we ever imagined. And for us, when we learned about this iceberg principle, it was like our Titanic sank of what our ideas of what it was to evangelize people in a parish. And we began to learn how to adapt 3 phases of a unified outreach to inactive Catholics using these principles in this drawing that I have for you. We do incredible programs, but they're usually one-shot events. And then afterwards, we're sort of scratching our head and saying, well, what happened from that? And we say, nothing much. Or we do something for a little while, it's a wonderful program, and then we don't do it because we don't get new people. Whereas what we've learned over time, when we started out, probably a year after we did an evangelizing effort in our parish, we'd have only 5% of the people we evangelized return. Now, that's not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. It just was, it seemed so meager for all the work that went into it. So in the 1990s, we were awakened to this in the diocese we were working in and in parishes we were working in by the Billy Graham Association. I always thought the Billy Graham Association was Billy Graham. Billy Graham first started off as an individual evangelist, but not very soon, not too long afterwards, he became involved with a whole organization of people who would actually, before they did one of their crusades in an area in the country, would send a team of people to go and live there for a few years as missionaries. And that team of people that would move in, would move their families and everything in, and they would start working, talking with people in churches and working to help them to understand what they wanted to do and how they would do it. And they were like they got the ground ready. They broke up the soil to be able to plant seeds of evangelization. I never knew that until I started working with them in the Rockville Center Diocese in the 1990s. Our bishop appointed our office to be the contact with the Billy Graham Association. And as we went through some of the training they were doing, we began to see some things that might work in a Catholic parish, not just in the, in this Protestant setting of across churches, all different denominations. But what would happen if we took some of the principles they were teaching us and actually applied them to a Catholic parish? So we began to do this. Well, we realized, first of all, that most of the time we were only interested in this 10% up at the top of the iceberg. Some kind of a large group event where we would bring people closer to God. We'd get them to a mission, get them to a retreat, and then we'd wonder why nothing happened afterwards and why they weren't with us a year later. But then below the water was what had to happen for this to be more effective. And what they told us was there needed to be 3 P's: preparation, which would be 45% of what's going on below the surface before an event or course or weekend ever happened. The 10% of the thing that evangelizes, and then a follow-up of 45% more of our time spent on following up with people we had never, ever imagined. We began to say, wow, if we did that, well, we wouldn't do as many evangelizing programs for sure, but maybe we'd see different results. So we started working with it. And almost from the very get-go that we started working with it, in a few years later, we went back and we checked to see if people were in the parishes where we had evangelized. And we saw 50 to 75% of the people that we had evangelized were still active. That there was such an impact that we went from 5% to 50 to 75% of people still with us a year or two later. How could we apply that? That's what we learned. How do we apply that to a Catholic parish? Well, we learned that preparation can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, minimum. It's that unseen 45% of our total efforts in the first half of the iceberg. Developing a team to run the program, training people into intercessory prayer for others, reaching out one-to-one in personal contact and invitations, inviting people to come to the program or project, preparing follow-up opportunities for people who we evangelize in the project, drawing people into discipleship to Jesus Christ over the long term, which is part of the follow-up that we had to plan for before we did the event. You know, we were doing it backwards. We were doing an event and expecting it to happen by almost miraculously, something would happen that would keep people around. But when we started to focus on these principles, we realized this is why we've got to look at this and we've got to do something about it. The second P, the proclamation part, that tip of the iceberg that I showed you in the drawing, is the 10% of our efforts with what we often refer to as a charismatic event. It is a proclamation of the gospel. Some way, a weekend, a retreat, a mission, a concert. It could be almost any number of different things where we would have a Christ-centered event, but we would have prepared beforehand to bring people to it and prepared to follow up with them afterwards, have them sign up at the situation where the proclamation took place. We did something called Evangelistic Ash Wednesdays. We looked and we said, where do people go to church most often in the year of the church? And we looked at Christmas and we said, well, everybody's exhausted after Christmas, and the parish staff and everybody goes on vacation because they're exhausted. We looked at Easter, and then we realized everybody was exhausted from all the things they were doing at Easter. And so, you know, there were people taking vacations and everything in the parish after they'd done all the Easter stuff. But we realized that around Ash Wednesday, there was hardly anything going on. And we wondered about, could we make that an evangelizing event? We did. We did it in such a way that it grew to, and we were working in the Diocese of Rockville Center, New York, where we had huge parishes, 20,000 families in some of those parishes. And we worked with 7 parishes over a period of years. And in those 7 parishes, they brought over 28,000 people to Ash Wednesdays that were evangelizing. And we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that went into follow-up in the third P, which is preservation, afterwards, went into small groups, Bible studies, Life in the Spirit seminars, certain kinds of things that were prayer groups that were in the area. And they followed up as part of those groups. And it changed everything. It changed everything. Pastors and parish staffs were coming back to us and saying, how did you get that to happen? We didn't get it to happen. We watched what God was doing. He was bringing people to Ash Wednesday, and we started to evangelize around it. In the parish proclamation part of any, whether it's a proclamation of the gospel, a Christ-centered talk, a mission, a series, a concert, people hear the good news proclaimed and they're invited to turn explicitly to Jesus Christ and to give their lives to him. But then we needed to do something at that too. We need to help them make that commitment concrete. So we would invite people to, at the doors, as they were leaving this situation, they could sign up for the next step. And the next step would maybe be 1 or 2 or 3 things that were going to be follow-up to this. And it could be that they would go into a Bible study. It could be that they would go into serving in such a way in a particular committee that was looking for help or needed help. And the gifts they had were ones that they could use. We realized that this was really critical to being able to keep and develop disciples of Jesus over time. The preservation part is the second 45% under view. We don't see it. People don't know that's going on unless they're part of the project, where we follow up and give people, helping people to give themselves to Jesus. These are things we prepared for and developed. So it's not, you can't wait, do the preparation, do an event or a weekend or a retreat or whatever, and then suddenly you say, oh, we got to do something to follow up. No, too late. You have to do it. Preparation needs to take place in that first 45% that's unseen by the public. Then the follow-up would be intensive phone calls, emails to people, social media contact, texts, US mail, invitations directly from the pastor in writing, whatever it would take, that they are invited to the next step, whatever it is. Now, it could be that it was a single event followed by a parish mission. In the Evangelistic Ash Wednesdays that we'd started, we had a parish mission a week and a half to 2 weeks after Evangelistic Ash Wednesday, where they came for a 3-day mission. And in that mission, they would be asked to get into small groups and to talk about what Jesus was doing in their lives, or if God was real and how they could make God real in their lives. It could be a retreat day. There could be invitations to the Sacrament of Penance. When we did this Ash Wednesday effort, we set up the last night of the parish mission was going to be ending with a chance for people to go to confession. And so they brought in, tons and tons of priests. The mission itself went on for an hour and a half. The confessions afterwards went on for 3 or 4 hours. And here we are struggling as a church, trying to get people to go to the Sacrament of Reconciliation, but we don't really put it in a setting that we prepare a setting where conversion can take place. That's really what an evangelization project or program does. It doesn't evangelize them alone by itself, but others who are faithful Jesus to followers and disciples can invite people to go and take the next step in their growth. That was followed up after the mission. And a week or 2 later, we started a short Bible study, small Bible study groups. And we had prepared the leaders and we had got materials out and everything we needed. And so they followed up for 4 weeks. After that, after Lent, they were invited to get involved in ministries. So there would be like a ministry fair day in the parish. And these people, many, 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 many of them walked right through the steps of the project and kept going. Others who only showed up one time, like for Ash Wednesday, met God in a powerful way, and the next year they were bringing their neighbors and relatives who were inactive Catholics back to the church for Ash Wednesday. And so we did this, trying to work with this and help people to move forward. We did it for 3 or 4 years, and the results were stunning in terms of the impact in parishes, different from what we'd ever seen before. But there was this process of preparation, proclamation, preservation. Using the 3 Ps in what we were working with, we realized that there weren't many programs that had that. Now, today, there are more programs that have follow-up and do a lot of preparation and do the evangelizing really well. Light of the World Ministries has that. Alpha now has that. Another of many, many different groups that you'll find in programs have follow-up programs after them. They didn't have follow-up programs years ago. But this was a new movement that we did. How did we learn about how this works? Well, we started off with, in the 1990s, early 1990s, we looked around and we said, where is God working? And we noticed that there were a lot of people going to healing masses in our diocese. So we decided to make a healing mass every so often, turn it into the center of the project, the proclamation part. We did the 45% preparation, we did the 45% follow-up. Developed something called the Healing Mass Project. Hundreds and hundreds of people. We filled the largest church on Long Island with 1,700 people for one of these masses, and followed up each time with as many as 300 or 400 people afterwards. Then we moved. My wife and I moved away from that situation, went to a new diocese in Trenton. And after a couple of years, we began to look around and say, where were people going? Where was God working? And we noticed, a lot of people want stuff at Christmas, but not on Christmas Day. And where were people going? Well, we found out that in that area, as we listened to people, that before Christmas, they would go to all kinds of tree lightings just to be there, to sing songs and be there with people who are preparing for Christmas. Now, in preparing for Christmas, we realized if they were willing to do that, what about if we put together our approach, preparation, proclamation, preservation, where we did that with Christmas carols, the real Christmas carols, the Jesus-centered Christmas carols, and founded a group called Christmas Carol Festival, a new way to reach inactive Catholics. We began doing that in 2007. After just a few years, in 2010, we had over 20 parishes doing it and more than 6,000 participants a year. It caught on like wildfire. Some parishes are even doing it to this day in that diocese. And one of the things that was just really helpful for us was the fact that we began to get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people coming back and saying, I never knew what the Christmas carols were really about. Because what we did is we sang Christmas carols, but we also helped to explain what they mean. We invited them to meet the Jesus behind it. We'd have a Jesus parade, bringing the baby to the and a number of other things that worked. And it worked over and over again, and it's worked in different parts of the country. They even have been working on it in Japan. Now, I don't know how many people they get, but they never reported back to us about that. But it has such an appeal that people want to do something before Christmas to prepare for the holiday that's not just giving out gifts or being caught up in the commercial aspects of it. Now, why don't people do this approach much? Well, first of all, one of the biggest things we had people say to us, this kind of evangelization is just too much work. Well, you know what? You're right. It's a lot of work. But if we let God guide us, we can do it. One of the answers we came up with about this whole thing was, well, where in scripture, church teaching, and missionary activity over the past 2,000 years does it say that evangelization doesn't take work? C.K. Chesterton has an interesting quote about Christianity, and he says that Christianity has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and not tried. I would say that Catholic missionary evangelization has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and not tried. Pope Paul VI, in his document on evangelization in the modern world, says this about what we need to commit to evangelizing others. Section 80. And may the world of our time, which is searching, sometimes with anguish, sometimes with hope, be enabled to receive the good news not from evangelizers who are dejected, discouraged, impatient, or anxious, but from ministers of the gospel whose lives glow with fervor, who have first received the joy of Jesus Christ, and who are willing to risk their lives so that the kingdom may be proclaimed and the church established in the midst of the world. We can do this if we work to evangelize others together.